there everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Elizabeth with Ellie's Handcrafted Jewelry, and today I'm going to show you how to create these fun woven drop earrings. Now this is a great project if you're wanting to dip your toe in the water a little bit and try out some wire weaving. And if you've seen some of my previous videos, hit that like button and help support this channel. Now let's get started. For tools you'll need chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, flush cutters, a ruler, you'll need a Sharpie, a mandrel, dowel, or pencil, and it's not necessary, but it's a great idea to have some nylon job pliers. For materials, you'll need 2 8mm beads, 12 3mm beads, 6 4-inch segments of 20 gauge wire, 28 gauge wire for weaving, and 24 gauge wire. Now take one of the 4-inch segments of 20 gauge wire and we're going to lay it on top of the ruler. We'll then grab our Sharpie and we're going to mark at the 2-inch mark, right at the center of the wire. From there, we'll grab our round nose pliers and we're going to go ahead and create a loop by simply holding it in place and then wrapping the wire around the pliers, kind of like a mandrel. From there, we're going to lay the loop right at the 3/4 of an inch mark, and then at the 0 mark, we'll mark with our Sharpie. And then we'll flip it over and we'll do the same on the opposite side. Once we've made our little loop, we're going to take about 30 inches of 28 gauge wire and we're going to basically fold it in half. So the ends should meet and then we'll just kind of have it folded at the top, not completely. And then we're going to go ahead and feed one of those lengths through the loop of the 20 gauge wire. So once we fed it through, we're going to go ahead and wrap the wire around each side at one time, and then we'll begin our weave. So just grab another 20 gauge segment of wire and place it next to the previous wire, and it should be about center. At that point, you could also mark it at the 2-inch segment and then just make it at the middle there. And then we're going to go ahead and wrap around both wires 2 times with our 28 gauge weaving wire. Once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and scooch that over a little bit, and then we're going to grab our weaving wire and wrap it around the top 2 base wires. The base wires being the 20 gauge wire, and we're just going to wrap it around 2 times like the previous time. From there, we're going to take our weaving wire and bring it up in between the top 2 wires and then begin wrapping it around the bottom 2 wires 2 times. And then we'll go over the top, bringing it in between the bottom 2 wires and wrapping around the top 2 wires 2 times. And we're just going to go ahead and continue the weave until we reach 3/4 of an inch. And once we've reached the 3/4 of an inch, we'll just wrap our wire around that bottom base wire 2 times. Now we're going to go ahead and repeat this on the opposite side, going to the 3/4 of an inch mark, just wrapping around the top 2 base wires, and then bringing up in between the 2 top base wires, and then down and around the bottom 2 base wires. And just repeating this pattern again until we reach the 3/4 of an inch mark. Once we've completed our weave, we'll grab a dowel or a mandrel and begin wrapping the woven wires around it. The loop should be at the center of the curve. Then grabbing your nylon jaw pliers or your chain nose pliers, begin pulling the loop downward. Now from here I'm going to go ahead and take my time a little bit and begin shaping the wire until it kind of looks like a teardrop shape. Now when I take the 8mm bead, it should sit nicely in there and there shouldn't be too much of a gap between the top and the bottom. Now I'm going to go ahead and string my 8mm bead onto some weaving wire. The weaving wire should be from the very back part of the weave. And then I'm going to feed it through in between the loop wire and the middle base wire. And this might take a little bit of doing, but just making sure to go through that space there in between. Now that I've strung the weaving wire through, I'm just pull it a little bit tight, make sure that that bead is secure in there. And then from there I'm going to take the weaving wire and I'm going to basically go over the top of those top two base wires and I'm going to feed it back through the bead. Once I pulled the bead tight in there, I'm going to go ahead and separate the back two base wires and I'm going to wrap it around the other base wire here towards the front. And I'm going to wrap that weaving wire around this base wire 3 times. And then I'll trim the wire. From there I'm going to do the pull twist method, which is just pulling and twisting. It's just like it sounds, so that way the wire comes off. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this wire around one more time, and then I'll grab my flesh cutters, trim it off, and then I will tuck in the excess wire. At this point I'm just playing with the wire a little bit until I get it to where I want it. Once I've gotten the wire to where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and bend back the 3 wires that are on the front, grab my flesh cutters, and then trim off the excess, being careful not to cut any of the wires behind the weave. And then I'll grab my chain nose pliers and then tuck in those excess wires. With the remaining 3 wires, I'm going to go ahead and separate the top wire. And then the back 2 wires, I'm going to bend over the last 3 wires. And then I'll grab my flesh cutters, trim those off, and tuck them in just like I did with the previous 3 wires. From there I'm going to grab my flesh cutters and I'm going to go ahead and trim the wire probably about 1/4 of an inch. And then I'll grab my round nose pliers and then I'll create a loop on top of the woven piece. this is how it should look like so far. Now I'm going to take 3mm bead and string it onto some 24 gauge wire. I've cut about an 8-inch segment to work off of. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my round nose pliers and begin creating a loop on top of that. But I'm not going to complete the loop because I'm going to need to feed that onto the bottom loop of the woven piece that we just created. So grab that and then string it on over the top like so. Grab some pliers, chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, and hold that loop and then just wrap around the excess wire 3 times. And then we'll trim it off with our flush cutters, and then we'll tuck that in with our chain nose pliers. Now we're just going to go ahead and secure that bead right underneath that loop. Grab our round nose pliers, place it right on top of that bead, bend it over slightly, and begin creating another loop on top. And then holding it like you would with a mandrel, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap that wire around the space above the bead 3 times. From there, we'll then trim that off with the flush cutters, and then also tuck that in with the chain nose pliers like the previous loop. Now I'm basically going to repeat this process, stringing on another 3mm bead to the 24 gauge wire, creating another loop on top, not completing the loop, but leaving it open so I can run it through the bottom loop of the previous bead, grabbing my, round nose pliers and wrapping that around 3 times. Once I've completed the loop, I'll go ahead and grab my flush cutters and trim off the excess as close as I can, and then I'm going to scoop that 3mm bead underneath again. Put my round nose pliers right at the tip there above the 3mm bead to complete or create a space, and then creating another loop on top of that, and then wrapping the 24 gauge wire around that space 3 more times. And then I will grab my flush cutters and my chain nose pliers and tuck in any burrs. Just continue adding beads until you get to this pattern. It'll be 1 on the left, 3 in the middle, and 2 on the right side. And to create the other earring, just repeat all the previous steps and mirror the earring by overlapping the woven wire the opposite direction and placing the beads at the bottom the opposite to the first earring. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on the latest videos. And I hope you have a great one.